Hi everyone, this is Paul here for the Magdalene Centre. Today I'm doing the astrology report for the week commencing the 21st of November, and I'll be outlining some of the key aspects and transits taking place this week and giving an overview of what it all means. Before I do that though, I just want to clarify, as I always do, that the astrology doesn't control our lives. It merely gives us some guidance or framework to help us understand what the energies around us are doing, and it helps us to identify what kind of lessons are available to be learning and how we can integrate or work with the natural cycles at this time rather than trying to go against them. Now, in terms of the aspects this week, I'll do a quick run through them. So we begin with the moon, where she starts in Taurus, so this is a time where we may feel need to kind of slow down, deal with the practicalities of life, and just take things slowly rather than rushing. We may feel need to ground out to some extent. On Friday, the moon will enter Gemini, so this is a time where we focus more on communication, research, and getting information together. But we also, on the same day, we have a full moon in Gemini, so this gives us an opportunity to reflect on how well we strike a balance between the logic of Gemini and the intuition of Sagittarius. It also allows us to reflect on how well we grasp the microcosm and macrocosm and how they reflect one another, but I'll do a separate video on that in more detail. On Sunday, the moon will enter her home sign of Cancer, and this will be a time for us to get in touch with our emotions, maybe retreat a little bit and spend some time with ourselves to get in touch with our emotions, let them flow. Before on Tuesday, the moon will enter Leo, and this is a time where we may feel that we need to express ourselves, to just be ourselves rather than what other people expect. And it's also a time to encourage other people to embrace their creativity and work with it rather than trying to go against it. So there's quite a few aspects taking place this week. One of the key one is going to be the sun is moving out of Scorpio and into Sagittarius on Thursday, so this brings a whole new theme for us to be working with. The sun's recently been helping us to highlight old conditioning, old things we're keeping a hold of, or where we maintain a sense of victimhood out of fear of power, or where do we still try and control situations around us because we lack faith, or we don't think we're strong enough to deal with it without it happening the way we want it to. So with the sun moving into Sagittarius, this is now a time for expanding our sense of identity. It's looking to push our idea of who we are beyond just what we do or who we're with. It's about that search for meaning, but during this time it's also looking at being honest with ourselves about what is our measure of things like generosity, what is our measure of tolerance, what is our measure of kindness. And if we struggle with these areas, if we usually end up hoarding things, so we resonate more with greed than we do with generosity, then this is obviously time that we need to be looking at ourselves and working on this. But as I said, there'll be another video on this in more detail. On Friday, so the same day as the full moon in Gemini, a grand cross formation is going to start. So this involves Uranus retrograde in Aries, the North Node in Cancer, Venus in her Procer retrograde shadow over in Libra, and the South Node / Vesta in Capricorn. This is going to last for over a week, so it doesn't finish until the 2nd of December, so it'll be present for over a week for us. And this tests us, or presents us with another crossroads, not unlike the one we had a few weeks ago in the fixed signs. What this one's asking us to do is giving us that choice again. Do we hang around at the South Node where we're working on trying to do things to gain respect from other people rather than doing what's right for who we are? Are we so focused on the goal that we ignore the process, or we don't appreciate it? Or do we go inwards? Do we take that inward journey to know ourselves, to establish our own foundations, and instead of focusing on the goals, identify what actually reflects who we are, and then rather than rushing to achieve the goal, it's more about enjoying the process. It's about living life rather than pursuing the goal, if you like. It's all well and good to have goals, but if we're so fixated on the end result that we ignore the process, then we don't actually enjoy it. So part of it is about getting back in touch with ourselves, reconnecting with our own feelings, and developing humility and empathy to allow us to connect with one another again. With Uranus in Aries, this is trying to awaken us to a higher level of understanding of who we are, it's the I am, if you like. Whilst Venus over in a home sign of Libra reminds us of the need to honour our connections with one another, to remember that we're all related. So with Venus and Uranus opposing one another, this isn't time for us to honestly reflect on, do the relationships we have reflect who we are or allow us to explore who we are? But likewise, do we have a tendency to be so self-absorbed or so focused on being special or unique that we forget that everything's interrelated? So we need to balance both sides at the same time. So have a higher understanding of who we are, and this then enables a higher level of harmony with others because it's based on truth rather than pretending to be something that we're not. Now there's also got quite a lot happening on about Monday, Tuesday, so the main focus throughout the week is going to be on Mars as such because of squares to Jupiter, which we had the exact one on Tuesday just gone, but we'll still be feeling this throughout the week. And there's a square building up between Mars and the Sun. This won't be exact until around about the 3rd of December, but we'll probably start feeling it now anyway. And we also have a square, an exact square between Mercury and Mars. So this is the second of 3 squares between the two. This time though it's in Sagittarius and Pisces. So we're being checked this week about what our desires are, what goals we pursue. Because with the square to the Sun, one thing we need to be mindful of is, the goals that we're pursuing or the actions that we take, are they actually aligned with who we are, or is there a fundamental disconnect? Are we one thing but we keep doing taking other actions which go directly against our core nature? And square to Mercury is all about that clash between what we say and what we do. So one of the things we need to be mindful this week is, what is the nature of our actions and desires like, and how well does it actually reflect our sense of identity, but also do our actions and what we say align with one another? So key challenge this week is rising above the ego. It's with the Sun and Jupiter in Sagittarius, and the Sun and Jupiter will conjunct one another on Monday, so this will be a very powerful opportunity for us to expand our level of understanding of our sense of self-identity through understanding the big picture and understanding how our beliefs have a major impact on our sense of who we are. So this is a time for us to really dig deep and try and move beyond any limited thinking or any kind of thinking that traps us in an old way of being or prevents us from seeing ourselves clearly. With Mercury retrograde also conjunct Jupiter around this time, this is really an opportunity to expand our understanding of our minds, to really push it much higher. The Sun and Mercury will conjunct one another on Tuesday, so this brings the midpoints of the Mercury retrograde and the seed of the new beginning. So Sagittarius is a key focus this week, as is Pisces, due to Mars' presence there in Pisces, and squaring off to the planets in Sagittarius. We do, however, have an exact sextile forming to Mars from Saturn in Capricorn. So Saturn does bring a certain element of necessary grounding to help us keep our actions under better control, but it obviously requires that we're willing to take responsibility for our actions in the first place, and that we're willing to take responsibility for our lives in general. So making sure that when we say something, we actually mean it. If we say we're going to do it, we do it. And we also make sure that we rein in our desires so that whatever we're doing is only true for who we are. We're not doing something to either gain some kind of approval elsewhere or pursuing goals which aren't in line with who we are, but due to any old programming still stuck in the ego, the actions are being thwarted by the ego rather than being harnessed so they are the outward manifestation of our internal landscape. So for all of us this week, this is a key opportunity for us to expand our level of awareness, but it's also time to pay very close attention to our actions and desires and be mindful where we engage in an activity potentially out of compulsive habit that isn't right for who we are, or isn't going to support us or enable us to grow properly. So we're looking at any tendencies for self-sabotage here. So it's important that our actions and desires are brought under control through some kind of spiritual practice, and cultivating that higher awareness that moves above or beyond the limitations of the ego or the constant separation that the ego engenders, and instead rise above it and be able to see it from a higher perspective, and learn to bring our actions and desires into alignment with our sense of who we are, bring our thoughts and words into alignment, so we're not careless with our thoughts, we're mindful of our thoughts. So it's learning to bring our thoughts and our actions into alignment with the core sense of who we are, whilst Jupiter reminds us that we need to keep expanding our sense of who we are. This doesn't mean that the ego expands. What I'm talking about is we start to understand ourselves as part of the collective rather than just as an individual. We understand that we share a planet with several billion other souls, and if we want things to work out in a healthy way, or in a way that's aligned with the natural cycles, then we need to make sure that the actions that we take are not going to be detrimental to the collective whole. So this is a week for expanding our level of awareness, of bringing our actions and desires under control, watching our thoughts and words carefully. And with Mercury retrograde, this is particularly the case, because miscommunication can be rife here, but that's usually because we haven't made the communication process conscious. But if we can make sure that whenever we're communicating with one another, that we always seek to speak the truth as best we know it. None of us have the whole truth. There's always going to be greater levels of truth for us to discover and integrate within our own lives. But as long as we seek to tell the truth as best we know at this point in time, we'll be open to other perspectives presented to us, because other people may have truths that we need to hear. So it's having that humility to acknowledge that we don't have all the answers, no one does. It's looking to see that, maintain that student mindset, or maintain the beginner's minds, and avoid the trap of thinking that we already know everything, so there's nothing else for us to learn, because that's when the mind becomes closed and it starts to stagnate. It's only through keeping the mind open, keeping it challenged through new experiences, new concepts, new belief systems that we encounter, that the mind's boundaries can be expanded beyond their current limits, and we can seek a more transpersonal understanding where we recognise that we're part of something much greater than ourselves. It's far bigger than any one individual, but each and every one of us is important in our own way. We all have a part to play in the world around us. But if we want things to be peaceful, if we want peace, if we want love, then we have to embody that. We have to create that on the inside. We have to transform our belief systems if they're still based on fear and scarcity, or if they're still driven by the ego rather than the seeking of understanding through uniting knowledge and wisdom together. Especially with Jupiter in Sagittarius now, this is a key year for us all to seek to expand our level of awareness, to embrace new knowledge, embrace wisdom, and seek the understanding that marries the two together. But it requires each and every one of us to be honest with ourselves and be humble enough to recognise when our understanding or our picture of things is incomplete. And the more we share our stories, the more we seek to find the common ground that unites us, the better able we can reach that transpersonal level of awareness, the more we can understand that we're part of everything else, what we do has consequences elsewhere. And if we have that personal discipline that Saturn in Capricorn is highlighting, whilst embracing the faith and optimism of Jupiter in Sagittarius, this is a time where I can really rise beyond our current limitations, and through understanding the big picture and then seeking to live in alignment with it. And also with Neptune one thing I've forgotten to mention, in fact, is Neptune is turning direct on the 24th. So Neptune turning direct is a time where the boundaries, or the veils between the worlds of veils of illusion, become slightly thicker again, so the ego becomes stronger again. So maybe less susceptible to the psychic energy around us, but it's important that we always seek to maintain that compassion and that understanding at the deep level that we're all interconnected, to maintaining that compassion and unconditional love for one another, and still seeking to raise our vibration through shedding fear and embracing love, through understanding ourselves at a deep level and seeking to understand one another so that we all can feel heard and loved, as it were. And it's through this mutual honouring of one another, to honour oneself and honour one another, that we can transform the world around us. But it starts with ourselves. It starts with us being honest with ourselves first and foremost, recognising where we hold ourselves back, recognising where we allow fear to stop us, and instead embrace love, embrace faith, embrace truth, to move forward and push ourselves way beyond our comfort zone and recognise who we really are at a deeper level, and working with one another to create new ways of being that honour the natural laws, that maintain personal discipline, maintain our personal integrity, and are based in love rather than fear and control. So may this week bring you many blessings and many new insights, and take care and may you be blessed and receive much love this week.